When your eyes don't team together
Right.
and scan and track or accommodate or focus, and people with ADHD tend to have that in high numbers. We're learning so much more about not just ADHD, but all of these conditions. It only creates more, mental health and social emotional challenges. You only realize that you're not in a vacuum and that you are navigating all these different systems and people and relationships. It helps you to improve not just relationships with yourself and others, and you realize grace and mercy for themselves that they never had before. And the research is coming out more and more interventions and more support is available now, that so many people can look back and say, nobody knew then, and we know now. And so now it could be empowering because now I know.
Welcome to the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. I'm Larry Wagner, and I've spent 30 years working with seniors, where I was a certified senior advisor, and the last 15 years in the home buying industry as a certified senior transition specialist, where I specialize in dealing with seniors going through a transition in their lives. This podcast is for seniors, those with seniors they love, and people who work in the senior community. In each episode, we bring on a guest who works to improve the lives of seniors. This podcast is your key to unlocking senior resources. Welcome. Today we're here with Dr. Lisa Zaretsky from Zaretsky Wellness. How are you today?
I'm good, thank you. Thank you for having me.
You're very welcome. I'm very interested in today's podcast. So I was on your website, and there's a lot of things there that resonated with me and people I know. Just in a sentence or two, just explain what is that you do. And I want to ask you then, how did you get to do this?
Sure. So what do I do? It's a little complex in that...
You have 1 or 2 sentences.
Absolutely.
There you go.
Well, I prefaced that by saying I have a 99% success rate in all the services that we have. And we have a concierge suite of services that includes counseling, consulting, and I developed a hypnotherapy coaching program. That's a 3-month program. So it's for those who don't want to sit on a couch and want meaningful change rapidly. That's the way to go. And I have a 99% success rate there. I also tend to get people for counseling where they have been stuck or haven't been successful, and we have a really high success rate there. And then consulting, I consult in the educational world, and I also consult in business world.
Okay. Well, elaborate on that a little bit. So questions on that.
Yeah.
I didn't know that part.
Yeah.
But the first part is, how did you get to do what you're doing?
Well, that's a convoluted question.
The journey?
Well, yeah, I would say God. It's really been divinely led. I graduated as a teacher, in elementary and special ed. I got my postmaster's in reading. I also got my master's in social work. And I went into social work for a bit, then pivoted to teaching. And I was in teaching for a while. And then I was needed at home. And from there, I went back into consulting so I could still be home. And then I went back into private practice, and then I started Zaretsky Wellness to bring it all together. And I got advanced training in hypnotherapy and rapid transformational therapy and psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy. So coming from it, psychedelic-assisted psychotherapy.
We'll get to that also.
We will. Yeah. So I'm licensed as an LCSW in Florida, South Carolina, New York, and I did it through my Florida license. And I had intensive training in that. And while it's not legal in New York, there's a lot of structure and frameworks that I bring into the work, especially in the hypnotherapy coaching program. And I also have my doctorate in cognitive sciences, specifically in cognitive diversity. So it all comes together to work in the services that we provide at Zaretsky Wellness. And what makes us different than other wellness companies or wellness spas or therapy or consulting is that we bring all of this to the table. We have all of this background training experience, over 40 years of experience, and we're able to service a wide scope of clientele and needs, and the services are fluid. So if you come for something and you need extra support, we could do that too. And we have a wide network, and we build teams when needed. And we work with ages 3 and up. So we work with children, teens, adults, and I think we really can service just about any need, and when we can't, we refer out, and we support it or we co-treat with that with whoever we refer out to.
Co-treat, that's interesting. So
When
you need
needed.
more than just one one type of treatment. That's interesting.
When needed, for sure. Or if they require a higher level of care, I certainly, would refer. I would speak with them. We'd work together to make sure that what's needed is taken care of.
Right.
Yeah.
There's so many things that you do.
Yeah.
The one that when we met, I mentioned that I saw that you deal with ADHD. I have ADHD.
Oh, yes. I have an area of expertise there.
Yeah, area of expertise. So we're going to talk about that again, more detail
Yeah.
offline, because it's not an ADHD podcast.
Yeah.
But many people who are listening, suffer. I don't want to say suffer. Live with.
Yes.
I don't want to say suffer with. To me, it's a blessing. That's another story.
There's a lot of strengths
Right.
that people don't realize are related to
Right.
ADHD, for
Right.
sure.
My wife may not agree with that, but that's another story. So, but putting that aside, but this is mainly a senior-oriented podcast. But I say people typically 50 and up are really, this is suicide marketing in that people 50 and up have either parents who are seniors or the seniors themselves are listening. But even people 50 and up have children in their 20s and 30s. So this basically covers the wide spectrum of what you do. And I have in-laws who are seniors. I have my kids are in their 30s, and I have grandchildren that are over 3. And you said you deal with 3-year-olds.
Yeah.
And up. So you deal with everyone in my world. But
Which is typical because family systems are complex. And when somebody comes in, it's not just about them. You know, we have a very systems approach. And based on Bowen family systems and systems theory in general. And so when somebody comes in, they're not coming in an isolated vacuum.
Right.
They're very connected to multiple systems, their own system of who they are biologically, biosocially, psychologically, spiritually. And then they're in a family system or a school system or a work system or a community system, and the list goes on. And I think that's a very important piece to look at.
Right.
So we are able to service in that way. And in part, our approach really supports that. And based on what you just said, it really is telling to your listeners that looking at themselves within systems can be very therapeutic as well as very productive. Because when you realize that you're not in a vacuum and that you are navigating all these different systems and people and relationships, it helps you to improve not just relationships with yourself and others, but it can also improve your productivity, your performance in different areas, purpose, communication. The list goes on.
Right, absolutely. Everything has tentacles. That's the way I describe it. My ADHD, for instance, has tentacles that affects my relationship with my wife, with my children, with my coworkers, my business partner. It affects my productivity. It affects everything I do.
That's true.
So relationship with friends. So that goes whether you're getting early, if you're aging, your personality is changing, whatever it is. And if you have other issues that can be addressed, aging can't really be addressed, I'm assuming. Well, it depends, I guess, what's going on.
I think it really does. During COVID, I partnered with ADA, which is an organization that's global. It's attention deficit disorder. It services mostly adults, but it's the systems in that there's for parents, there's all different, they have all different kinds of support groups there and programming and psychoeducation. So we partnered with them during COVID to do a Friday night series.
Right.
And during that Friday night series, we did a lot of psychoeducation on different areas of ADHD. And we brought in the concept of twice exceptionality, which is a lot of people from ADHD that have ADHD, not all, tend to have. And it's when you're on both sides of the bell curve and you have gifts in a certain area that are 2 standard deviations one way, and you have some kind of disability, ADHD or whatever, that in some areas brings you to 2 standard deviations in the other way. And you have this wide gap in between. And the trajectory as you grow and age, as a senior included, it continues to expand. And we actually had a lot of seniors come to that, people of all ages, but a lot of seniors. And we also talked about co-occurring conditions. What typically in high numbers, occurs with ADHD. We had behavioral optometrists come on because oculomotor challenges tend to...
behavioral optometrists?
Yeah, neurobehavioral optometrist that deals with something called ocular motor disorders or difficulties when your eyes don't team together and scan and track or accommodate or focus. And people with ADHD tend to have that in high numbers.
Huh.
And also it can either exacerbate the ADHD or even present as ADHD. We had somebody come in that was one of the leading experts in auditory processing disorder. And she talked about how that co-occurs very often with ADHD. We had somebody come in that was a dyslexia expert, and we talked about how that is high in co-occurrence. And what we saw, and I can talk about the more of the experts. We had somebody come in and gifted. We had a neuropsychologist come in and talk about the testing process. The bottom line is we had such a wide scope of people come, a lot of seniors, a lot of people in their 50s, and the light bulbs went on.
Yep.
And they would say, oh, that's me. Oh, that's me. And some of them didn't even know they had ADHD or didn't know they had the co-occurring conditions. And it was very empowering for them because it affected their psyche, their self-esteem, their confidence, so many things along the way. Yeah, along the way. And I had 70-year-olds crying, like, oh my God, that's me. Oh my, like relief that they could actually put a name to what's been going on. And now that they can, it's not going to define them. It's going to help them find pathways for support, for help, for anything that they need. And that was the overwhelming response. And sometimes, people think that getting a label or a diagnosis is negative. There's this whole concept of negatives with labels. It can be, depending on the personality, how they internalize it or the system that they're in and how they talk about it. But in this case, and I would say a lot of the adults, and we had anywhere from, late 18 to 80 or more to attend these programming. And the overwhelming response was relief, was thank you, more information. How can I get more information? How can I? And so many people were helped and really learned more about themselves and came out of this self-blame, self-loathing place and realizing, oh, okay. And I think that that's the benefit of getting diagnosed later in life too, in that you can look back and have grace and mercy for yourself and see, I could only do with what I know, and I can only know what I know. And we're learning so much more about not just ADHD, but all of these conditions. And the research is coming out more and more interventions and more support is available now, that so many people can look back and say, nobody knew then, and we know now. And so now it could be empowering because now I know, and have that grace and mercy for themselves that they never had before, have compassion for themselves that they never had before. And also very often, even affecting, people in their 20s and 30s, their kids are getting diagnosed. And so then they're saying, and then they're getting diagnosed because their kids are.
I've heard that a lot.
Yes. And so, what I'm seeing is, to your audience, is that it is a senior issue. It's a Gen X issue. It's a millennial issue. It is a baby boomer issue. It is a, Gen Z issue, and so on.
Right.
So it is something that not as only affects systems, it affects every generation.
I was diagnosed in my mid-60s.
Mm-hmm.
So, and so this really is appropriate for a senior podcast. And as I said, our people listen oftentimes are children of seniors who are 50s, things of that nature. And there's more and more people getting diagnosed at that stage, especially when I was a kid. I grew up in the 60s and 70s. And if you were jumping off the walls, you had ADD. Mm-hmm. If you weren't jumping off the walls, you didn't have ADD. That seemed to be the defining issue.
If you even got diagnosed with ADD, because I grew up in the 70s too.
There you go.
So
there you go.
I graduated from my MSW in 1990.
Mm-hmm.
It was barely addressed, if at all. If
Really?
at all. And one of the places I worked in after I graduated from my MSW was Astor Day Treatment. And that's a day treatment. They also have a residence up in Rhinebeck. But we had some kids with ADHD, and most of the treatment at the time was either Ritalin or psychotropic medications that were much more powerful and today's day would be considered inappropriate. Mm. And we had kids with co-occurring conditions. At the time, it was called Asperger's. Now it's called autism, ASD level 1. And some of these kids didn't have access to the right medications, the right treatment, the right diagnostics. They'd be overdiagnosed. And that was back in the early 90s. And now I'm seeing today that there's more coordinated care. There's more knowledge. There's better medications. Medication is not always the answer. diet, different therapies. There's so many different ways to approach it. Then, that wasn't predominant. But my point being is that 60s and 70s, when you and I were in school, you hardly heard of it.
Yeah.
There was little to no training even in mental health graduate programs. And I went to a top, MSW program, which I still think very highly of. And I think I had an amazing, education there. It was incredibly clinical, psychodynamic. I'm still grateful for going there and that education there. And yet it was barely touched.
Right, barely touched. So we had no prayer in the 60s and 70s.
Nope.
I said, I remember my friend. He
prayer, yes,
right.
Making the best of it. But in terms of understanding what was really going on and being able to name it and have resources and interventions for it, very unlikely.
Oh, my friend who was clearly, still is, I still see him from kindergarten till now. And he said, oh, he's hyperactive. And that was it. That's the way it is. So you yell at him, you punish him.
And right, which doesn't work. And it only creates more, mental health and social emotional challenges that create patterns. And then, if those patterns are not interrupted, it creates these faulty belief systems and these limited belief systems that affect somebody through a lifetime, because whatever experiences they go through in life are filtered through those faulty limited beliefs, which is part of like that hypnotherapy program that I talked to you about, where we really address that at the root cause. But we address that even in therapy. When I see people with ADHD, we address these patterns of thoughts that come from these patterns of beliefs that create these actions and behaviors. You and I were talking before we started filming that most people that work with me, they learn to differentiate the difference between themselves and ADHD, and that they're not a slave or a victim to ADHD. And they learn when ADHD is in the driver's seat and driving the car, and when they're in the passenger seat or not even in the car at all.
Right.
And then they become empowered and more to not just be in the car, but to be in the driver's seat and take over the wheel.
I feel like I'm running after the car.
Yes. Yeah. And so the people that work with me, they learn to be aware and recognize that, have grace and acceptance and mercy for the times before they understood this, and really start to change patterns of awareness, beliefs, thoughts, which then change their actions and behaviors. And they learn, oh, that's ADHD in the driver's seat. I'm getting into the driver's seat. Then they become in the driver's seat more and more, and they steer the ship more and more, and they learn practical strategies to do that become sustainable. They become sustainable because their beliefs and thinking also start to be reshaped and changed. And instead of being a victim, which they didn't realize that they were most of the time, some do, they're then, and they thought they were helpless.
Right.
They learn that they actually are very empowered and that they have the power and they take their power back. And I think that's really important too. But that's work. You have to be willing to be invested in yourself. You have to be willing to be invested in meaningful change. And you have to be willing to be invested in doing the work to change your beliefs, to change your thought patterns, that change your emotional patterns and your actions and your behaviors. Because the emotional patterns too, people with ADHD and neurodivergent characteristics tend to have big emotions, and yet they're not a slave to their emotions. And they recognize where those emotions are coming from. They're coming from these belief patterns and these thought patterns that can be reshaped, and they actually can be at the wheel also with their emotions. It is a choice. It becomes a choice when they thought it wasn't. It becomes something that they can drive rather than being driven or driving them. And that is empowering too, and that could be life-changing.
Yep. I know with my coach, he talks about the beauty of working with adults is they've learned how to deal with ADHD, and they come up with techniques to balance that with their ADHDism, because everyone in our group is an entrepreneur. They've made it to the level of entrepreneurship, and everyone has to be successful because it's a very expensive program. So they have to have that disposable money to pay for this program. And in spite of their ADHD, they've managed to get here. So therefore, they've made workarounds. And he goes, so if you made workarounds, sometimes they're good workarounds, sometimes they're bad. So now we know that the things that we can adjust for the most part are learned behaviors. And he's big about learned behaviors can be changed. We can unlearn them or learn something new.
If somebody's willing to do so. Same thing with me. Somebody has to be willing to invest in themselves for me too.
That's what made you say it.
And that's the expertise that you bring to the table.
Yep.
and, how I vet as well. Clearly, somebody has to be able to and want to invest in themselves to be able to come and work with me and be in it to win it, to do the work to make that change. So I think that, and when somebody has skin in the game, that means that they're more willing, I have found, to do the work to make the change. Because people get addicted to also what doesn't work for them because it's familiar. And they confuse familiarity with comfort. The mind does that too.
Yes.
And they're not one and the same. And so they have to learn to discern and differentiate familiarity and comfort as well. And they also have to recognize that they've been addicted to these patterns for so long because there's a payoff. And they've built up their tolerance just like you build up tolerance to alcohol or drugs or anything else. And once they realize that there is this payoff, and there's even the internal drugstore working here, the dopamine, the drive for dopamine, the tolerance level, that also gets higher and higher. And you have to be willing to be able to break that pattern and live another way and not live based on that payoff or even that internal drugstore payoff or that pattern of behavior payoff that and recognize while that was familiar, it certainly wasn't comfortable. And even if you're drawn back to that, you have to learn the skills to be aware that that is not comfort, that's familiarity. And that's what I'm learning to reshape. And that's what I'm learning to live. And that's what I'm driving away from or I'm pivoting from.
So question, what percentage of your practice deals with ADHD?
A large part.
It is.
I tend to attract people with ADHD because I have expertise.
Right.
In ADHD, I have expertise in twice exceptionality, which I explained earlier, and neurodivergence and gifted. And a large part of the population does tend to have ADHD. And I get a lot of referrals through that as well. And I have a high success rate.
Right.
And I approach it very differently than most therapists do or ADHD coaches. And again, my success rate is really high.
Yes. Well, that's very appealing to me. Very high success rate. I was going to talk about more, but let's change topic from ADHD. What other things are you dealing with? Because we're talking about specific, let's talk about adults. What are the reasons that people come in to see you?
I get such a wide scope of people and reasons. I was telling you earlier that I have a 50% clientele that's men, 50% that's women. The ages is so variable, 50% pediatric, 50% adults. And even within those, it's, 50%, 50%. I tend to attract, far and wide in terms of that. And I in terms of adults, I'll get people who are stuck in their professional world, stuck in their relationships, stuck in their feeling of purpose, financially. They could have challenges in relationships or with addiction. They could have depression and anxiety. I tend to get parents with kids who have areas of neurodivergence or twice exceptionality. And those are the clients that I get for the educational consulting when their kid is not fitting into school or the school program or they're suffering, socially, or they're just not able to achieve and the school is not getting them, or they're not feeling comfortable in the school. So that's where I tend to get, educational consulting clients in the area of twice exceptionality. The counseling, the therapy part of that's a wide scope. It tends to be ADHD or trauma or feeling stuck. And then for the hypnotherapy coaching program, that tends to be the people who are willing to invest significantly financially in themselves and also in themselves as a whole.
Right.
Significantly, what I mean by is rapid transformational change, meaningful change at the root level. So significance has a significant meaning because it applies financially, showing up, changing years of patterns at the root level, beliefs that have been rooted there for so long that have created all these other things, but not sitting on a couch, in therapy. And for some people, that's very necessary. That support, that structure, that pace is very important. for those who want another way, I offer that. And so I have something called the hypnotherapy coaching program. That's a 3-month program where we get right to the roots, reasons, and causes of what's in your way, what's creating these symptoms, what you don't want to live with anymore. You've had it. You're just done and you're ready to live another way. You don't even have to believe that it's going to work, but you have to believe and want to live another way. And it works. And it works when they show up, when they have skin in the game, when they do what they're supposed to do. And it's really doing the program requires showing up for the appointments virtually or in person.
That's going to be my next question.
Yeah, virtually in person. The first appointment, they come in. Well, we do an intake first. They have to send paperwork so I can read through everything. And they have to really think about like what they want. And then we meet for the first appointment and we build a roadmap. Where have you been? Where are you now? Where are you going? And that's very informative. And I ask very targeted questions about that to really get them to think. And it's only 45 minutes and we get that done. And when they look at this roadmap, they're like, oh my goodness. And they get clearer where they want to go. And I get the doorway in for the hypnotherapy. Okay, this is how we have to go in. It doesn't mean that's where we're going, but that's the doorway in because the mind will go wherever it's ready to go. So people who are afraid of hypnotherapy or anything like that, even when you review things from the past or trauma, it's not reliving it. It's just reviewing it so that you can learn something from it, what meaning was put to that and how to create new meaning. And looking at how that meaning is not serving you or it might not even be accurate. And the mind will only go there if it's ready to go there. So your mind will not even go there unless it's ready. And it'll take you to other places to accomplish the same thing. And I'm a trained clinician as well as a certified hypnotherapist. I'm a licensed mental health professional and also a licensed teacher. I have a lot of credentials and I have a lot of experience, 40 years of experience and training on how to guide anything that comes up also. So we have 100% success rate there of people in terms of safety and comfort and finding solutions and doing what we need to do while they're under. And that's a deep dive. That's the second week where we do the hypnotherapy and it's a 3-hour appointment. And we do a deep dive going into, what are the reasons and the roots and causes behind what you came in for. And we find it out.
3 hours? Are you on hypnotherapy for 3 hours?
Well, we have to structure it. So the whole appointment is 3 hours, but they could be under, depending on what they need. And everything is guided. I'm very spiritual also. So before any time I work with somebody, I'll always say, okay, God, you brought me here. This is where I landed. This is where I am right now. This is the mission. Please work through me, speak through me to work with this person for their highest, greatest good and healing. And for my highest, greatest good, truly, I feel like I'm worked through. I'm a vessel at this point, where, God uses my training and my intelligence and my emotional IQ and my life experiences and my credentials and everything. And I'm just guided, truly. And through that, we really figure out like what was in the way, what are the causes, and we release them. And then that opens it up to reframe new thoughts and emotional patterns and actions and behaviors going forward. And I always tell people, okay, and then they don't work afterwards. It's like going for outpatient surgery, or dental surgery. You have something released or gone, you're not going to work, right?
Yes.
You're going to rest the rest of the day because a lot of energetic things start to happen. Some people sweat, some people cry, some people get very energetic, and they always have to integrate with nature afterwards because that helps with integration no matter what. And I give them a list of things to do. And I say to them, okay, for the next week, it might feel a little odd because you might have thoughts circling, but they won't have any place to land. And they don't really understand what that means. And then they come back the following week and they're like, oh, I understand what you mean now. And the reason for that is that all those thoughts are habitual and they were attached to the beliefs that were all released, that were not even serving them. And so then we work on releasing those thoughts and reshaping them and planting new ones and helping them grow with practical strategies that serve them and also get them to the desires and the paths that they want to go to. So that's very meaningful. And that's the third session. And then the fourth session
Before we go to that, I want to say something. You said
go for it.
something really interesting.
Okay.
That you're a vessel, for God and so on.
It's a very spiritual way to practice.
Very.
Yes.
And someone, as a doctor, my brother has his doctorate. He's a scientific guy. He's studied animal behavior. So he sort of did a little bit of what you did, but with animals. He said the reason and so on was interesting. But putting that aside, you talk to God about God to scientists.
Yeah.
And God can't be proven, therefore it's not scientific. And here you're bringing God into something that seems very ungodlike to me. So which I find I don't say unique, because I don't know how many people do this, but what I would think would be unique within your practice, within your type of practice.
Could be, and I have a different perspective about God couldn't be proven either. I think God is proven in so many different ways that requires expanded perspective and multiple perspective, which is something that people work on in my practice. I have a lot of people that come in looking at something black and white, and we learn, okay, so what's in the middle? What's on either side? What's in front? What's in back? Where's the aerial view? Right? So, and what might not seem black and white then can even be like, okay, well, maybe that is. There's no right and wrong.
Right.
So I think that, from my perspective, and I also study Kabbalah very deeply, and not even in a religious way, in a spiritual way. In addition to all the scientific training, educational, psychodynamic training I've had, psychoeducation, and my own work, throughout my life. Everything I work with people, I've done them for myself first, right? So I'm my first,
I do the same thing.
And
I'm my own guinea pig.
And also, I beta test also before, if I develop a program or something, I beta test it, and I collect data. So everything I do is data driven.
Right.
So in answer to your question, it's really an eclectic approach. So I do bring the spirituality in, but I'm very transparent about that too. I'll let people know that, that's how I approach it along with everything else.
Right.
So if you're not comfortable with that, you're not going to, I don't say it out loud, but I want to be truthful that there's a partnership there, as well as utilizing everything I have, and a partnership with the person that's in front of me too.
Right.
They have to participate as well. They are a full participant, and that's where we get the results and success. So even, they are given from the roadmap to the week where we do the hypnotherapy, that week in between, I give them a primer recording. And that recording gets them used to my voice. It also gets their mind used to what's going to occur, what hypnotherapy is, how to feel safe, what to expect. And gets their mind ready. You came here to make the change. We're going to make it. And this is how we're going to do it. And then during that 3-hour session, part of it at the end is a transformation recording. So everything that we've learned then gets put into a 15-minute recording, so that their mind is listening to it every day. These are the things that we learned. This is where you're heading. And part of the roadmap is they have to give me details of every way that they want to live their life. And live well, and how it looks differently going forward after this program. And that's all put in the recording. And they have to make a commitment from the beginning that they're going to listen to this daily. And it doesn't matter when they listen to it. And if they don't have time, they can listen to it when they fall asleep. It's going to do the same thing. And they will be given practical strategies to build skills throughout the program with me so that it makes it sustainable. So they have to listen to the recording. They have to implement the things that they learn, these practical strategies, these tools, these resources, and utilize them. It's not a lot, but it is a way to start making that change. So incrementally, big bang, anywhere in between, it makes the change, and it creates new patterns, because what's required for new patterns is intensity, frequency, and duration. That's basic neuroscience.
Intensity,
frequency and duration. That's basic neuroscience. That goes back to Glenn Doman's work. And he created the Institutes for the Achievement of Human Potential. He's written tons of books. And he worked with disabled children, saying that there is hope for them by changing neuroplasticity. And neuroplasticity in the science world, the neuroscience world, that's become more apparent in the last 10, 15 years. He was saying it back in the 70s. So, and any change, whether it be neuroplastic, which is what happens when you do hypnotherapy, or any pattern change, when you get to the deep roots, you're creating new neural pathways and you're changing not just your mind, but your brain. And so we work through this program doing intensity, frequency, and duration to make those changes from what we've released and what we've planted new seeds into water and grow. And fast forward to the end, like the 5th week, we create a blueprint. And it has on it a self-assessment where they're very honest, but you already see growth. Their priorities, you see how their priorities have changed. You see their values, you see how their values become more clear and how some might have changed. We come up with goals and SMART goals so that they're specific and they're time-driven. And we come up with action plans. So you don't have goals without an action plan. And then we have every area of life that they want to work on, and then those that they didn't even bring up. So that all gets applied so that they're seeing the systems within themselves and their lives, and they have to come up with very concrete, specific goals and action plans. And we do it, and it doesn't take long. It's in 45 minutes. And then they're on their way. And then I pass the baton to them for 4 to 6 weeks with skills, with strategies, what we've worked on. I'm accessible, the blueprint. They have to look at the blueprint every day. They have to use their tools and strategies. They have to listen to the recording. And then when they come back for a follow-up. And I would say 90-something% of the time, at least 50% of the blueprint is checked off and they've accomplished it already. Huh. And if not more. And we then create another blueprint from that. And it shows how they can scaffold and build those new paths. And then they're on their way and they come back if they want to for coaching on a regular basis, semi-regular basis, check in. They've learned to use their intuition and their inner wisdom to guide them to be able to decide and schedule that. I'm not giving that recommendation. I'll work with them. I'll give them my opinion, but that not until they check in with themselves first.
So you said something. You said many things that were fascinating, but you said, now, not only does it change your mind, it changes your brain.
Yes.
Can you please explain?
Yeah. So it's based on the premise of neuroplasticity. Mm-hmm. So when you release a belief or something that was that was limiting you, right? That you've had years of patterning of neural pathways. So any kind of belief, any kind of thought pattern creates neural pathways. So it is your mind, but it's also created neural pathways. Right. It's created like a predictive response, right? So this is going to happen. The brain already knows predicting it's going to happen. And then you just succumb to the fact that it's going to happen. And
some of those things that are just innate and some things we've trained our brain to think
most
that way.
Of the time, if you trained your brain to in terms of the patterns, obviously there's development, right? So we're human beings that have developmental trajectories that are innate, for sure. There are things that are passed on intergenerationally, genetically, epigenetically. I mean, that's a convoluted, complex question, but, I'm simplifying it when I say that. So we have these organic, innate, developmental neural pathways that come about through development and human nature. And then there are the learned ones. And many, many times, all beliefs are learned, right? And that's based on your environment, the systems you're in. It could be the genetic piece of you on how you internalize it. It could be your sensitivities. It could be your lens and your perception. If somebody has, sometimes people with neurodivergent profiles, sometimes they may be challenged with, say, theory of mind, which is the ability, I'm going to simplify it, but it's the ability to take yourself and put yourself in somebody else's shoes. It's the ability to see an aerial view and perspective. It's the ability to see whole to part and part to whole. It's the ability to see multiple perspectives. It's the ability to read a room. It translates into social cognition, right? So people with neurodivergence sometimes have challenges in these areas, and thank God we now can diagnose that. We have lots of interventions to work on that and support people and grow those skills. However, if they have a challenge there and it's filtered through those lens and that way of seeing the world, then sure, it's going to be limited, right? So once they become aware of that or it's released through hypnotherapy, we then, in either case, we then can start to reshape and rechange it. And the skills do build, and they are able to apply them. They have to synthesize and apply.
Yep. Okay.
That was just a concrete example,
Correct.
but that's
Absolutely.
not the only time
no, I
that
get
it's the lenses and the narratives that you filter through your experiences in the world that create the beliefs and the thoughts that then create these emotional patterns, and they loop and they ping pong with each other, and they create actions, and actions over time create behaviors, and behaviors over time create patterns and addictions and everything else.
Hi, I'm Larry.
And I'm Ben. We're the father and son team of Leave the Key Home Buyers, and we want to buy your house.
We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you were going through.
So if you're considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out and see how we can help.
Do you have an outdated home?
No need to update anything.
Have a home that needs repairs?
Don't bother with repairs.
Don't want to take everything with you?
Leave whatever you want behind.
Dreading the headaches that come with agents?
Sell your home without paying a commission.
Dreading prying neighbors, attending open houses, and passing judgment on your home?
No need for public showings.
When you sell to us, you'll have all the certainty of closing on your timeline, not someone else's, and there's absolutely no pressure.
Visit leavethekey.com or call us today for a no-obligation offer at 631-388-7771 if you want to sell your home today.
Is addiction a big reason people come to you?
It could be.
I mean,
it's not. I absolutely have seen people with addictions for sure,
Right.
and miraculous changes, like their whole life coming apart.
And you talk about
I
going
mean,
to the dentist.
miraculous.
Right.
Yes.
Talk about going to the dentist. I have a toothache. I don't have a toothache. It's very black and white. But with an alcoholic, I'm an alcoholic. Well, I'm a drinker. I'm not a drinker. That's one of those things that you can do. That's black and white. I assume that's kind of binary. But then what happens to their lives when they stop drinking is the part that's much more nuanced. So you have a light, it's sort of like having a dimmer switch. You know, once you turn it on a little bit, the light's on. It's no matter how bright you make it.
Correct.
So,
That is correct.
so
And there are nuances, and some people require multi-levels of support. I'm a big fan of like really, really strong 12-step programs. But I've had somebody go through my program that literally was kicked out of his house, marriage, everything, and went through the hypnotherapy coaching program. He did 2. He subsequently has done more, but for other reasons, and did a 12-step in the beginning. And I don't promote this because I'm a big fan of like that support. But in this case, everybody's different, and then this particular person has been able to find other means of support. Like he completely changed, and his perspective, his ideas, his beliefs, and every aspect of his life changed. No more alcohol, no more addictions. His emotional patterns have changed. His marriage has bloomed and grown. His relationship with his kids, his professional life, it's all completely transformed. His productivity, his what he makes, financially has completely grown and changed. And he does his own reading. So instead of going to 12-step programs, he does reading that reinforces the work that we've done. Became very spiritual. That has, in 12 steps is a spiritual component for sure. So I don't want to say it's a one size fits all, but I will say that whatever it is, it does make that transformation. And then the idea is the plan of how is this going to be sustainable and work? And what are you willing to invest in yourself? Financially, doing the work, building the skills, sustainability, and support and resources and community, which we work on all of that. Yeah.
Right. So, okay, I agree. You have to treat someone holistically.
Yeah.
You can't just say that they're going to drink, going to get you to stop drinking. You have to know why they're drinking to get them to stop drinking, I'm assuming. Is that a fair comment? Or not
I would say that they have to be aware of, I would say that if they understood the root causes, it would be a more seamless process. However, I think the awareness is key. Awareness of, they maybe not have to know all the reasons, but they have to be aware of when and why they want to pick up the drink, or any kind of numbing activity, any kind of numbing behavior, any kind of disassociative behavior, any kind of detachment behavior, all of those, any kind of compartmentalizing, any of those things, or a combination of them absolutely contribute for sure. And it's a disconnection from self, which is then a detachment and a disconnection from their world, from their relationships.
Right.
And they don't even realize it.
You've mentioned relationships and marriage a number of times. Do you do marriage work together, husband and wife together?
So I have worked with families together. I do work with couples. It depends on the scenario. And I think it also depends on each person. Sometimes I'll refer out. It's a very variable. It really depends on the situation at the time and the person that I'm working with. Very often I will, especially when I'm working with children, I definitely will work with the parents, and I definitely will work with the family. It just comes together. When it comes to adults, one, it has to be their choice.
Right.
And two, it has to be able to serve the client and the marriage together, right? So I tend to see the client. Occasionally I'll see them as a couple, but for continuous couples counseling, I will refer them to a couples counselor that is familiar with whatever the need is. When we were talking about ADHD before, there are many, I mean, it is an issue unto its own and requires its own type of treatment for couples counseling. And my experience is many therapists are not trained in ADHD-impacted marriages. And it requires a whole different approach. And the typical approaches, pieces of different approaches may work, but there's no evidence-based approach to this day for couples impacted by ADHD, whether it be one or both who have the ADHD. Yeah. I would say that there is a great book. I forgot who wrote it, but it's called "Is It Yumi or ADD? Getting Off the Roller Coaster." And the author of that, and I'm blanking on it, she wrote a book with somebody else about ADHD-impacted marriages and approaches to it. And I think they've come the closest, although I don't think it's perfected. And it's not, that's really a struggle in terms of ADHD marriages, that there aren't a lot of couples counselors that are trained in it effectively and efficiently. And there are no techniques that we know are evidence-based that absolutely work. There are no programs. There are people that sell programs out there, and they're supposedly the experts, and they come and they do the speaking at the conferences, and they're also, not evidence-based, and they're not highly effective.
Right.
So I think it has to be nuanced and approached in a very careful way.
Yes. I started seeing a therapist because of issues dealing with ADHD, and I found the therapist was just a regular therapist, and I left pretty quickly.
I can imagine.
Yeah, and it just didn't work. I saw I wasn't being handled the way I needed to be handled, spoken to, whatever the word I don't want to say handled, sounds like a negative connotation, but it wasn't a proper relationship. I'll leave it at that. And then COVID hit, and it sort of gave me the reason to end. And what problem was, I saw 3 times COVID hit, and I said, no reason to go back. I said, I'll talk to you when COVID's over. I thought it'd be a couple of months, we're back to normal, and I would have told them I'm going somewhere else. But that conversation never took place. But yeah, that's an issue, because I know in my program that I'm taking, so many people are double couples, if you will, and so one couple had 3 kids. It was 5 of them all had ADHD, and so she was the one who had to take care of everybody.
Yep.
And which is probably more common than not, ADHD or not. But
well, also the person without the ADHD, if there's one person in the couple, and the impacted couple, and the other person doesn't, little by little, they tend to start overcompensating to keep the ship afloat, and they don't even realize it. And that's very parallel to couples where one person's an addict, or couples where one person has a mental health issue, and very often they all go hand in hand and they co-occur.
Right.
So you can have any one of those or a combination of any of those, and in the couples that are impacted by that, it's very complex. But there's similarities there, and a lot of people are not trained to look at those similarities and how to address it, and how to address the people that are impacted in that couple, because even a couple is a system, right?
Yes.
And you have both people that are impacted. That's one approach. You have one person who's impacted and one person who's doing all the compensating. That's another approach. And both have to be seen, and both have to be treated, and both have to be worked together, recognizing the dynamics that are there.
Yep. Absolutely. 100%. 100%.
Yeah.
So So you said some people need the, you also said, going back to what you said so much. I'm trying to bring up I got to bring that up, got to bring that up, got to bring that up. The podcast
I
would be
could come
4
back.
hours. It would be 4 hours. I feel like doing one long episode and cutting in half.
Yeah.
You said about, that some people want that long-term therapy kind of, they need, to use your word, they need that
I would say, it's more suited. It's suited for them. The structure, the pace, the scaffolding. For some people, that is absolutely the right thing. I think I think therapy should come with a warning label. There's a lot of therapists out there, no offense to anybody, that just, may do more harm than good. I've seen it with my own eyes and my own family and clients that I get. And whether it's intentional or not, that's not for me to say. Most of the time, I'm sure it's not intentional. Right. It's training, it's culture, it's therapy culture. I'm not speaking negatively. I'm saying that it should, what my experience is. There are different things that require different nuances and expertise, and people think that they can just apply their general skills, or they think their knowledge, and there's just so much more to it. So again, I'm not really speaking negatively. I'm saying that there are these issues and we have to talk about them, because if we don't, then how do you find solutions, right? So that's, and there are people doing more harm than good. And then there are people that are doing great good, right? So I think that it's very important, one, to find the right fit with the right approaches, with the right, and somebody who's going to really be able to sit with you and say, okay, this is what you need, and I've had people who do require that long-term therapy and scaffolding, and maybe in therapy for the rest of their lives. It provides structure. They're always willing to grow. The therapy helps them to do that growth, to open up things, to see things they wouldn't have seen before, to have the courage and the safety and the vulnerability to be able to do it in a way that's incremental, or that's at their pace, that could be scaffolded, to know what came before that, to be able to bridge the gap for them, to be able to give them the tools to be able to develop those skills week to week. That's where somebody in long-term therapy, and there are people that do very well with that, and that are excellent candidates, and that they may need that. And there are other people that need shorter stints in therapy, or that they come and they go. If they're going to do that habitually because they're avoiding, or they can't, one thing. But if they get to a certain level and they feel like they've accomplished and they're where they're at, and then they want to take a break, and then they realize, okay, I'm ready for the next level, that's another type. There are people who have tried that, all of that, and it doesn't work for them, and they come to do the hypnotherapy coaching program, and like miracles happen. And then they wind up coming, but they're using their instincts on booking. So it might be every 6 weeks, it may be every month, it may be every 3 months. And they've learned to tap into a part of them that is helping to direct the course of the support and the treatment that they get. So it varies. It really varies.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
I mean, without a doubt, I would expect it to vary from person to person.
And I think it's important for the therapist to help them, find that path, and let them be a participant in it, and helping them to have insight and introspection to be able to tap into that part of themselves, and to discern and differentiate, is there this avoidance or is this growth, and making those decisions too. And what's my processing time too? Some people process, but when you process, are you processing in live time? Are you setting intentions? Are you journaling? Are you pulling it together? How are you doing that? If somebody's just saying, oh, I don't want to do this, I need to process. Okay, so how are you structuring that to make sure that you're accountable for that processing?
Processing. It's funny. I ask people a question. They say, I'll think about it, I'll get back to you. They're not going to think about it again until you ask the next time.
Correct. And people with ADHD are so used to not having that intention setting.
Yes.
Or circling back to that accountability, and putting that structure in place. And to a lot of people with ADHD, that structure can feel very binding and scary and constricting, and yet it's very empowering, because discipline is one of the most empowering things you will ever gain. And discipline is what brings success. It brings success in relationships. It brings success to your health. And so it's just redefining it and learning that it's not a dirty word. It's actually an empowering word that brings back your power. It brings your willpower into a place that's empowering, right? So you're not at the mercy of just anything anymore, which you've used to have the limiting belief that that was freedom. Actually, discipline is freedom. Creating structure within structure is freedom. It brings your power back. It helps you reach your goals. It helps you create new paths. It helps you give direction. It executes and initiates and executes action plans. And it allows you to have the cognitive flexibility to pivot when needed because you have that awareness and the discernment. And now you have the skills and the structure to be able to do that with intention.
Right.
Yeah.
That's intention. It's all about intention, without a doubt.
And
So
being aware of where those intentions come from.
that's the therapy part. I mean, I don't.
For sure.
Yeah, for sure.
And that's something that I work with people on and recognizing why that's so important and bridging that gap. And what are you filtering through? What narrative, what lens, what belief system, what thought? Because when you set those intentions, being aware of that is just as important.
For sure.
Yeah.
Man, my brain's swimming. Okay.
So take a deep breath. Why don't you just take a deep breath and like let your breath guide you?
Right. Am I paying you for this session?
Well, I would say that to anyone, truly. Right. But yes, that you just got a sneak peek into, when somebody's brain is swimming, that's okay. First of all, accept it. This is what's happening. Yep. This is all new information.
Yep.
And all this new information, I have to build the files for them, which is okay. That's part of the building those new neural pathways. And once I build those files for them, then I can organize them. That's okay too. So when that's happening, allow yourself to have the information there so that you can build the files and accept that this is just how your brain's going to go about it. And when you take a breath, the breath is always with you. It's free, right? It's always with you and free. And it will also help regulate you and it will help gain clarity. So it's almost like you're taking the swimming and you're saying, okay, I'm going to get out of that swamp that's stagnant and swirling, and I'm going to allow it to flow like a river. Because even if there's a boulder in the way, the water will still go over it, around it, but it will flow. And then you go with the flow of the current of life. So breath is a key piece of that to then gain clarity to flow. It doesn't have to be organized yet, but it's flowing.
Correct. One of the things in my current coaching, they say sit with it, which seems basically the same thing you're saying. It's just something just overwhelming for a moment. It's overwhelming, just take a step back. Don't you have to try to jump into the overwhelm. Just sit back, and if you sit a little while, that overwhelm tends to go away. So
I would say the breath is the key piece there, though, because people will ruminate. So I think if you're going to just sit with it, it's really important to be very conscious and intentional about some kind of breath work while you do that, because the breath work will also interrupt the ruminating. And so if you do the breath work and you focus with intention on having clarity and moving forward, then yes, I would say, okay, that's a great strategy.
That's interesting. That's very interesting. His guy got involved in coaching because from personal experience.
Of course.
But without the background you have. That's an interesting addition to his comment.
Yeah.
I'm gonna give
and
that
works
shot.
for anybody in any age.
At any age. And
even
for any
those who are
reason.
so set in their ways, like a lot of people say seniors are set in their ways. I've seen seniors change their ways when they're ready and wanting to, right? But that being said, even when they're not wanting to, okay, that's their prerogative and that's okay without judgment. The breath will still support, help, and assist them during overwhelm or anything else. And it's always with them. Yeah, so I think breath is such a key piece.
I'm going to add that.
Breath work? Yeah.
Yeah, to but that's interesting.
Yeah.
So I used it recently and it really did work, but my mind's reeling on that
well,
one.
breath also helps you to accept, and release and let go. Yeah. And it's that surrender piece of breath too. And that when we surrender, then high power and other things can come in and help you too.
Interesting the way you use the word surrender. It's like, okay, I'll do it your way. It's like I do associate a deep breath with surrender, but I would never associate the way you're associating it with surrender.
And it doesn't even have to be somebody else's way. It could be God's way.
It could be God's way.
When you surrender, you're saying, okay, I'm not in control.
Right.
I get it. I get it. There's something greater in control. And when you do surrender to that with intention and you do your part, you're now in a partnership.
Right. Interesting. So
Part of the 12 steps, too, if you think about it. It's just said in a different way.
then they've been around a while
Yeah.
and they've worked and they work. So if you were to sort of, we've been talking about what you do all this time, and I can keep going on and on and on.
I'll come
But
back.
you'll come back. You'll be invited back. But if you were to, usually I look at you and I talk, I'm just like trying to focus, get my question together. So if you were to sort of summarize your practice. First, I have one other, I had a question for you I wanted to ask you earlier.
Go
before I
ahead.
ask you this question. That is, do you deal with all the people come through the doors or the airwaves or do you have people working for you who are doing that? Or both?
Oh, so that's a very interesting question. So I have a team, and I'm actually starting to build out. So in come the fall, the plan is to have. I'm going to be training other people to work within the methodology and the ways that I work. So come in the fall, the plan is I'm actually in the works right now to have other people starting to work with the clientele that comes in.
And that'll be in person or virtually?
Well, we're going to start with the new people virtually first as they continue to get their feet wet, and then we'll go from there.
Okay. And so the next question I was going to ask a moment ago, and that is, if you were to sort of summarize, like what would somebody be looking for that they would gravitate towards you versus someone else who can offer assistance in some kind of social problem, mental health problem, or whatever the proper term would be? I'm not even sure.
So that's a great question. One, a large part of the practice is referral based because of the high success rate. People learn, or for example, I have an internist that tends to refer to me because I've had a lot of her people, and she sees she absolutely sees the therapy, the hypnotherapy, she sees it all. And so referral people know that I have a high success rate. Also, people will hear about me through podcasts or word of mouth, or I spoke on a panel once that I wound up having like referrals from people, and they saw like that whole thing of people who have had such meaningful, profound change. And I get results that are, the results I get are so high, and the approaches I have are unique as well as evidence-based. And there's so many approaches that I can use. I have a lot of training, experience, and background, and experience in so many areas with so many ages. And I've seen so much. And myself personally, I've been through so much that it brings a perspective to the table and an understanding. So most of the time I can say to people I work with, I understand and truly mean it. And the 5% that I can't or less, I'll say, I can imagine, and I can bridge that gap through that way. So given my own life experiences and the training and the credentials and the experience that I bring to the table, and the techniques, the evidence-based, and my ability to put programs together and have the success rates that I do, I think creates a wide gap between what typically is available and also what makes me unique and effective for people to come and have that success.
When you talk about your success rate, you've referenced a number of times, and it's very appealing. Mm-hmm. And you even mentioned sort of how you measure success. You alluded to it. What do other practitioners say in the psychological field, if you will? Would a success rate be? I mean, if I'm going for therapy, I'll use the word conventional, which probably is an open-ended term. Is there an answer to that, or it's an unanswerable question?
I think some people take data, some people don't. I think some people use batteries and tools to take data. I don't think there's one way. Mm-hmm. I think if people reach their goals and how they go about it, where they get stuck, if they stay lingering at certain symptoms, all of that is taken into consideration. And so, I have very concrete, like for the hypnotherapy coaching program, I shared, there's a lot of data taken. There's different ways to reassess. I'm not the only person, taking the data, so to speak. We're in it together. We go through it together. And in therapy, it's very important to take very copious notes, to look at, what the they're called SOAP notes, what's objective, the assessment, and the process that they go through. All of that's really important to compare and look at, and look at what they've met. What part of the action plan have they met? What part of the goals have they met? Where is their satisfaction in it? Where are their symptoms? Where's their belief systems? Where are their thinking patterns? How are has their emotional regulation in response to all of that? Are they responding versus are they reacting? Are their patterns changing? Are they living another way, and how are they doing that? Are they able to pivot? Where is their cognitive flexibility? On how are you rating that? There's just so many ways to look at it. There's rubrics that I look at, so I think each clinician is different. Each practice has different set of structure and rules on how to do that. If they take insurance tends to require different assessments being used once a month or every couple of months. I don't think there's a right way or a wrong way. I just think it's important to collect quantitative and qualitative data. So, and discuss that with the person you're working with, and make sure that that's part of the discussion so that you're getting both perspectives on growth.
Makes sense. Absolutely. Yeah. If there's one thing, normally I know the answer, and I think I know the answer, but before I ask the question, my father always used to say to me, never ask a question unless you know the answer. I said, can I say, then why would I ask the question? It took me until I was like 30 years old to understand that.
Yeah.
But anyway, but in this case, I don't know the answer. And that is, if you were to say there's one main takeaway from this last hour or so we spent together, what would that one takeaway be?
Well, I think that's a very challenging question. When it's funny because at the end,
I feel better that I don't have an answer.
At the end of every session, I always say to somebody, "What are your biggest takeaways?" Mm-hmm. Because if I say one takeaway,
I could be a therapist. Yeah.
That's very. It first forces people to narrow into something and summarize something that may not be connected to other takeaways that they got from that. So I think I might answer that in what are your biggest takeaways or main points. So I would say one, that we were really able to talk about the ADHD community and help people recognize that it's not a one-size-fits-all. However, when you learn more, you can do more. And learning is power, and you can take your power back, and you can understand what may be involved, and that there are resources and communities to be able to support you. There are people with expertise. Second piece of that is that make sure that you go to somebody with the right expertise.
Yes.
And that's really important, and that it's a right fit, and do your research, because people may say they have the expertise and ask questions like, what's your approach? Or, and learn to follow your inner wisdom and your guidance too. And that it's important to have skin in the game, right? It's not just go fix me. It's that you have to be willing to live another way. You have to be able to put financial commitment involved. You have to be willing to do the work to grow skills and practical strategies. And that I think that our audience gain the knowledge that you can have meaningful change, and root causes that have been there for years and years, subconscious or even those in the conscious, can be changed. And that you can be in the driver's seat to do that. It's the right support, the right tools, the right strategies, the right approach, therapeutically and otherwise. With you being a full participant, with the right person, you can get there. And that could be sustainable. And that whether you get support ongoing or not, you've had the support and you can apply the support and the resources, but it's up to you to continue the sustainability. And that is doable. And I've seen it be very successful, and that you can live another way. And that no matter what age you are, there's always hope. There's always hope to live another way and or enhance the life you live. And find your purpose, be yourself, self-connect, and there's always room for improvement within yourself and relationships, for sure, no matter what age you are.
We're going to have you
back. Would you add anything else?
Yeah, we're going to have you back, because I want to address the word purpose. You said it before, and that's such an important part of who I am. So I don't want to get into that now. We're going to definitely have to have you back, because there's so many things that can come up.
Yeah. Can I ask you a question?
Please.
What would be your biggest takeaways?
Well, my biggest takeaway, quite frankly, was the idea of the separation of brain and mind
Yeah.
and retraining your brain and mind.
Yeah.
Because that sort of goes to what you said. You can do anything, but it goes back to what you're willing to train your brain and your mind to do
Absolutely.
and think and believe.
And that's my specialty.
That's your specialty.
Yeah.
Do I have to like open it up and
Yeah.
lay it on the table for you?
No,
Yeah.
we you don't have to open it up. We do it.
Yeah.
We do it in other ways.
Oh, there you go. That's good. That's good. That's good. I don't like
Yeah.
the gore. So
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
get
but
to.
that was cool that you said that.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate your perspective on that. Yeah.
That's why that question asked. There was so many questions, but I knew if I asked all those questions, this thing would be hours long. So I said I have to keep
Yeah.
them to a minimum.
And were there any other takeaways? Because that was a profound one.
But that was my one big takeaway. I'm
Yeah.
allowed to limit it to one.
You could, for
and
sure.
That was really it. So many of the things you've spoken to me about, because we spent a good amount of time on ADHD, and since I've been diagnosed, I've been spending an enormous amount of my own personal time and life dealing with in therapy and so on. So a lot of it, I was familiar with, much of it I wasn't, but I know you could do anything you want to do. I'm always a firm believer in that. You're never locked. Sometimes you have physical limitabilities. I'm 5'3". I'm not going to be an NBA star. That was never in my future. But when it comes to your mind, you can pretty much be anything. Also, I have a certain IQ level. I'm probably never going to be a rocket. 67 years old, too late now to start. But I'm not
You're
about to
never
be a
too
rocket.
late.
Well, to be a rocket scientist, I maybe not. But my father.
I know somebody who went to medical school in their 50s. So
My
you just
father
never
wanted to go
know.
to law school in his 60s.
Your father did?
He didn't. He was going to. He said, I really want to. But at that time, we started our business together, and we were just so busy with work.
Yeah.
And I kept telling him, take time off and do it. And he just never did. And he would have loved it. He never would have been a lawyer. He just would have loved it.
Yeah.
If he went to a year's worth or a couple of courses worth. So I believe it's never too late. I do agree with that. I shouldn't have said what I said. That's a self-limiting belief. And
So
I
is
don't
the
like
word should
those.
have, like you could say I
Yeah.
could have.
Could have is better.
Yeah.
I'm not a self-limiting belief kind of person in general. Some things just you can't do. I'm just physical. I can't, be a basketball star. I just can't do that.
Get it?
But most things are really within everyone's grasp if they're willing to try and put the effort in and so on. So, and I do get frustrated with much of my personal life because I felt I should have been better at things that I'm not better at now. And I'm saying, but why don't I get better at them now? So again, this if you're not questioning your existence, I mean, to me, that goes back to you're kind of stuck. I mean, you should always want more and more and more. And I don't mean more money, but just more, period. Work can be whatever you want it to be. But
Growth.
it's just growth. I mean, it really is. We don't need stuff. Most people don't need stuff. They need growth. They need personal inward, more good feelings, more
And also,
self-satisfaction.
a lot of people don't want to sit with discomfort. And truly, growth is at the edge of your comfort zone.
Right.
And so I think a lot of people tend to be afraid of being uncomfortable and part of that journey. And I'm sure you've learned this throughout your journey. And we can even say the ADHD piece of that is that you have to learn to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. And
Yeah.
comfortable is a different word. Like I talked to you about before, familiarity and comfort are not the same thing.
Yes.
And so you have to start becoming familiar with discomfort, but you also have to start becoming comfortable with it. And comfortable doesn't mean, oh, I'm sitting on a lounge chair and I'm getting all these amazing, whatever, feeling just incredible. But also comfortable means that I can sit here, I can grow into these shoes, I can regulate myself, I can sustain myself, I can be vulnerable, I can grow through it, and I'm okay, and I'm going to be okay, and I accept it where it is.
Right.
That is just being comfortable with discomfort as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's an important life and human skill to learn.
That's very, very, very good. Very, very true.
Yeah.
But this is why this can go on for 3 hours.
Yeah.
So, so let's. How do people get hold of you and find you?
Okay, so they could go to my website, which is www.zaretsky-wellness.com. On there, they can go to contact us. There's a submission form. If they have any questions they want to learn, they can book a consult on there as well. It'll take them straight to a consult where, we talk about your goals. That's a paid consult, but it gets you in the door to where you want to go. Right? We talk about what service would be best for you. We talk about your goals. We lay out a framework and a plan, and we get going. So either or is
All that in
possible.
the 15-minute consult?
No, there's they can get in touch with us, right? And, we'll answer any questions, but they could also book a consult, which is a full appointment, which is where, they can get started with a consult where we actually, that's the initial consult where we actually do that kind of work. If they have any questions, they can submit a form and they can ask their questions there. They give their phone number, they give their email, and we'll get back to them within, 72 hours. And my email is there as well, so they can get in touch with me through email. But the website's probably the best way. They can learn more about the services. They can learn more about me. They can learn more about Zaretsky Wellness. And then they can either submit the submission form or they can book a consult.
It was a very comprehensive website. I always go through them before I speak to interview anybody.
Thank you.
It's part of what you have to do today. But no, it was very good. There's
Thank
so
you.
much potential, and that we all have that we're not realizing.
It's so true. And if you go to my social media, it really talks about a lot about potential. So my social media handle on Instagram is at Zaretsky Wellness, Zaretskywellness. On Facebook, it's Lisa Zaretsky is my personal page. There's a lot there. Also, there's Zaretsky Wellness page. LinkedIn, Lisa Zaretsky is my personal page. A lot there. Zaretsky Wellness, there's more there. We're on TikTok at Zaretsky Wellness, and we're on YouTube at Zaretsky Wellness. And people, if they're interested in this, I encourage them to go to YouTube long and short, because there's a lot of other interviews I've done where we talk more about a lot of these topics and other things. And I think people can learn more about me, about what I do, about Zaretsky Wellness. And there are other things, if they found of interest here today, that are elaborated on that they can learn from as well. Yeah.
Very good. Very good. I'd say a real pleasure, but it was an exhausting pleasure. It was very personal for me.
Yeah.
So
Can I reframe that for a second?
Go ahead.
How about instead of exhausting, because our mind is going to listen to the word exhausting, what if you say this was an interesting, stimulating, growth-oriented interview?
This was an interesting, stimulating, growth-oriented interview. There you go. I got it all, because all those words made sense. But I'm still exhausted. But my brain was working so hard. It usually, when the interviews, sometimes they're much lighter.
Yeah.
But this was
your brain was probably working very diligently because there was a lot that you were relating to.
Very much.
And you were very intentionally connecting to see what you can absorb that you can apply to your own life while also being the interviewer.
Absolutely.
And so that changes the game a bit, which is a great thing.
Yeah.
And yet you're doing two jobs at once, but they were connected and you were able to do it.
There you go. Bravo for Larry. It will end on that. There you go. Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for listening to this episode of the Unlocking Senior Resources podcast by Leave the Key. If you've enjoyed this episode or found it helpful, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this podcast. We specialize in working with seniors who are transitioning out of their homes, and we understand what you are going through. So if you are considering selling your home and would like an alternative to the traditional overwhelming process, reach out to see how we can help. When working with us, you can sell your home in its current condition, there is no need to remove unwanted items, and you control when the house is sold, along with so many other advantages. Visit leavethekey.com or call us at 631-388-7771 to learn more about our senior home buying process.